There is a particular kind of longing that many people carry quietly inside them, a deep, aching desire to be noticed, to be known, to matter to someone. And yet, the moment that attention actually arrives, when someone looks too closely, listens too carefully, or begins to truly see you, something inside you recoils. You shrink. You deflect. You make a joke, change the subject, or disappear entirely. This contradiction, this war between wanting to be seen and being terrified of it, is one of the most misunderstood emotional experiences a person can live with. And if this resonates with you, I want you to know something important: you are not broken, you are not difficult, and you are not alone. What you are carrying has a name, a history, and more importantly, a path forward. To understand why this contradiction exists, we have to go back. Not because the past is a place to live, but because it is where the blueprint of your emotional life was drawn. For most people who experience this push and pull relationship with attention, the roots stretch back to early childhood, to moments when being seen did not feel safe. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where your emotions were met with criticism or dismissal. Maybe when you expressed yourself, your excitement, your sadness, your needs, the response you received was mockery, irritation, or silence. You learned, slowly and painfully, that showing yourself fully to another person came with a cost. And so your nervous system did what it was designed to do: it adapted. It created a protective strategy. Want connection, but guard the door. This kind of pattern is closely tied to what psychologists call anxious avoidant attachment, a relational style that develops when a child's need for love and safety is met inconsistently. When a caregiver is sometimes warm and sometimes distant, sometimes present and sometimes withholding, the child grows up in a state of emotional ambivalence. They crave closeness because they have experienced its warmth. But they also fear it, because they have experienced its withdrawal. The result is a grown adult who sends out quiet signals: notice me, think about me, care about me, while simultaneously building walls that say but don't come too close. In everyday life, this behavior shows up in ways that can feel deeply confusing, even to the person experiencing it. You might work exceptionally hard at your job, pouring yourself into projects and achievements, secretly hoping someone will recognize your effort, but when the compliment finally comes, you brush it off, minimize your contribution, or feel a sudden wave of anxiety rather than pride. You might share pieces of your life online, carefully curated, strategically vulnerable, and feel a rush of something when people respond, only to feel exposed and embarrassed hours later, wishing you had said nothing at all. In relationships, you might drop hints about your feelings, your pain, your needs, hoping your partner will pick up on them, but if they sit you down and ask you directly, "How are you really doing?" you freeze. You say, "I'm fine." Because being asked to articulate yourself clearly, to exist fully in someone else's gaze, feels unbearable in a way that is difficult to explain. Part of what makes this experience so exhausting is the internal shame spiral it creates. You want attention, and then you feel ashamed for wanting it. You receive it, and then you feel exposed for having received it. You pull away, and then you feel lonely because you pulled away. Around and around it goes, each cycle reinforcing the belief that there is something fundamentally wrong with needing people. But here is the psychological truth: the need for attention is not a character flaw. It is a human need. Attention, in its truest form, is how we know we exist to someone else. It is how we feel real. The psychologist Irvin Yalom described the fear of non-existence, the terror of being unseen and therefore somehow unreal, as one of the deepest existential anxieties a person can face. When you want to be noticed, you are not being needy or immature. You are expressing one of the most fundamental human drives, the desire to matter. The fear of being fully seen, however, is also real and deserves to be honored. Because being truly seen, not the performative version of yourself, not the polished highlight reel, not the self you show when you feel in control, but the raw, uncertain, unfinished self that lives underneath all of that kind of visibility requires a level of vulnerability that feels genuinely dangerous to someone whose early experiences taught them that vulnerability leads to pain. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability captures this tension beautifully. She found that the people who struggled most with vulnerability were not those who had never known connection, they were those who had known it and lost it, or those who had reached for it and been turned away. Their avoidance was not indifference. It was self-protection rooted in experience. So what does healing look like for someone living inside this contradiction? It begins, perhaps counterintuitively, not with forcing yourself to be more open or more visible, but with getting curious about the version of you that is afraid. Because beneath the deflection and the self-sabotage and the shrinking, there is usually a younger part of you, a child who wanted desperately to be known and was told, in one way or another, that they were too much, or not enough, or simply inconvenient. That child developed this strategy not out of weakness, but out of extraordinary intelligence. Protecting yourself from pain is not a failure of character. It is evidence of resilience. The work of healing is not to dismantle that protection, it is to gently, slowly, update the belief system that made it necessary in the first place. One of the most meaningful shifts you can make is learning to tolerate the discomfort of being seen in small, manageable doses. This is what therapists sometimes call titrated exposure to vulnerability, not throwing yourself into deep emotional waters all at once, but wading in gradually, building evidence that visibility does not always lead to rejection or pain. It might look like letting a compliment land instead of deflecting it. It might look like answering "How are you?" with something true, even if it is just slightly more honest than your usual fine. It might look like staying in the room emotionally, not just physically, when someone turns their attention toward you, and noticing that you survived it. It also helps enormously to find what psychologists call a corrective emotional experience, a relationship, whether with a therapist, a trusted friend, or a partner, where the act of being seen is met not with judgment or abandonment, but with warmth and steadiness. Every time that happens, every time you risk a little visibility and the world does not collapse, your nervous system begins to revise its old story. Not overnight. Not in one dramatic moment. But gradually, the way seasons change almost imperceptibly, until one day you realize the air feels different. You are not too much. You are not invisible. And you are not condemned to spend your life hovering in the doorway between longing and fear, reaching for connection with one hand and holding it at arm's length with the other. The fact that you want to be seen even while it terrifies you is not a contradiction to be ashamed of. It is proof that a part of you still believes in the possibility of being truly known and truly loved. That part of you is right. The path to being seen begins with the quietest, most courageous act imaginable, allowing yourself to see yourself first, with compassion rather than criticism, with patience rather than judgment. From that foundation, everything else becomes possible. The walls do not have to come down all at once. They just have to develop a door, one you choose when to open, on your own terms, in your own time.